Hello and welcome to the Disability Diva channel. I'm the Disability Diva and this story has been 2 years in the making, and unfortunately for me it doesn't end here. 2 years of applications, 2 years of reviews, appeals, handballing, complaints, tribunal hearings, wasted resources, no accountability, and a shameless attempt to cover up their mistake. It's all about the NDIS. Let me explain. Now, I've made 2 independent applications to access the NDIS. One was done in March 2021, which was denied, and the second one was done in January 2022, which was a 56-page document that included occupational therapy assessments, specialist assessments, and it was compiled with the help of a previous NDIS assessor who instructed me how to meet all the criteria within the legislation. The NDIS assessor broke down the legislation and all the criteria within it and basically explained it to me piece by piece, bit by bit, and therefore we were able to address every element within the legislation in the NDIS Act, including the addition of an occupational therapy functional assessment, which was highly inclusive and included a thorough and comprehensive assessment of my physical functioning and the deficits therein. The NDIS on the phone were unable to elaborate any further, and it instructed me to go to my local NDIS provider at the office and seek their assistance, of which I did. I attended 2 NDIS offices and neither one was able to help me in any way, shape or form. So basically we put together another 14 pages of additional evidence from my occupational therapist and my endocrinologist and my GP and submitted that as an addition to the 56 pages already submitted. Two weeks after that, I received a letter from the NDIS stating that my application had been denied. Obviously, I was fairly upset. It had taken 3 months to compile the 56 pages in the first place and address all of the criteria in minute detail. So I requested a review of the decision. Now, the first step in the NDIS's review process is that you need to request an internal review, which is called an S100 review, which I did immediately. The NDIS sent me a receipt via email saying that they had received my request for the S100 review, and then I heard no more. Once I rang them back to try and find out where the review process was at, I was told that I had missed the time frame in which to apply for the review and that my review had been declined. However, I had evidence that my application for the review had been submitted within the time frame. So I went to the Administrative Appeals Tribunal. Now, the Administrative Appeals Tribunal is limited in its legislation. It can review an NDIS decision, but it is limited in that its hands were tied because the decision wasn't based on the NDIS Act for the denial. It was based on the fact that I apparently had not submitted my request within the time frame, which therefore was out of their jurisdiction. So we end up having an interlocutory hearing. The NDIS admitted that I had actually applied within the time frame and agreed to do the S100 review. They were instructed by the Administrative Appeals Tribunal to expedite an S100 review. During this time, I was dealing with a legal representative of the NDIS, whose name shall remain unknown, who was unavailable after the interlocutory hearing when I attempted multiple times emailing her. So after about 3 weeks, I rang the main call centre again of the NDIS and requested to speak to this person, only to be told that not only was she no longer an employee at the NDIS, but that there was no files, no information, absolutely nothing documented on my file from May 2022. So they denied having any information of the hearing with the tribunal. They denied having any requests from the tribunal for the S100 review. They were forwarded by me a copy of that directive on a couple of occasions, and it ended up taking almost 5 to 6 months before I eventually got my S100 internal review from the NDIS, and then that opened up another can of worms. Reading through their internal review documentation, the review officer has to explain exactly why your application was denied, and they have to do it bit by bit, going through the exact legislation that they are bound by as part of the process, which is what I had to apply for, which is the criteria that I had to abide by in the legislation, in the application itself. So they are bound by the same legislation. So she went through every item on the NDIS Act and every piece of criteria. She also noted on her review the documentation that she had used in the review process. And it wasn't until this time, when I reviewed this document myself thoroughly, I noticed that the documentation they'd used for the initial assessment back in January was my first application that I'd submitted in the March 2021, the year before. They've used the complete wrong application. No one had even looked at not only the 56 pages that I submitted on the 19th of January the following year, let alone the 14 that I added in February for the appeal. How does that happen? I was absolutely gobsmacked. And still am. So as you can imagine, I was on the warpath. After multiple complaints to the Commonwealth Ombudsman, the Disability Services Commissioner, I actually researched and found out the personal address of the CEO to the NDIS and sent her an email complaining. I sent internal complaints in via the feedback centre at the NDIS. I was a week late for the Disability Commission. And at this stage, I have now dealt with at least 25 different NDIS representatives, and I think I'm on my third legal NDIS representative at this stage. Also included was the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, which had that many hearings. I can't even remember the names of them. And the NDIS Quality and Safeguards Commission, I submitted a 21-page complaint along with an evidence bundle to coincide with that letter, only to receive a letter back from them stating that they are owned by the NDIS and I had to direct my complaint to them. When I say this isn't over for me yet, I mean it isn't over for me yet. At the time of this recording, the case is actually going to court within a fortnight because I refuse to give up, and I have fought for 2 years to try and obtain services that I desperately need from a government department that is supposed to provide these to people in need. And it shouldn't be this hard. My argument is that disabilities come in all shapes and sizes, and mine might be physical. It's not cognitive. And I've found it this hard. So what happens to those people that do have a cognitive impairment? How do they get the help? I myself requested 5 different advocates to come and assist me in this process from the beginning, including the NDIS. And all 5 have, for whatever reason, made excuse after excuse. So off to court I go, all alone. So I shall keep you updated. Good luck. And if I can help anyone in any other way to get through this ridiculously confusing pathway, if you want to call it that, to either Centrelink or the NDIS, please email me at emailthedisabilitydiva@gmail.com, or you can contact me on my YouTube channel at Disability Diva. Until then, Diva out.
It's the Disability Diva. She don't like Centrelink neither.